Welcome to Tools for Time Traveling, the podcast equipping creators to build the future today. Because the future isn't something that just happens to you, it's built by creators of all stripes.
Every episode, we'll talk to a creative industry expert to get a behind the curtains look at the past and present of our creative industries, so you can gain that unfair advantage as you build out the future of your career. This season, we're focusing on music creators and providing strategic tools that help them navigate this often disrupted industry as they take control of their future.
All right, now let's jump into the episode. All right, time travelers, welcome back to Tools for Time Traveling, the podcast equipping creatives to build the future today. I'm Gavin Guidry, creative director, maker of things, and this is my co-host here.
Hey there, this is Desmond Dickerson, futurist, strategist, former DJ.
Still current DJ? Still DJ?
Nah.
But yeah, thanks for tuning back in. For those who have been on this journey with us and those who have maybe tuning in for the first time, we are on a mission to figure out what's the future of creativity. And we've been starting in the music industry, of course, the most easily disrupted, most often disrupted creative industry out there. And we've been talking to industry experts to get a look at the past of music, figuring out how we've gotten to the present of music, and then understanding more insights about the past and the present to inform where we can take things in the future, so that the future looks a lot more friendly to creators like us who want to just take things in a bit of a more equitable direction. So before we continue to interview amazing guests, we just want to make sure that we're taking a second and drawing those connections and pulling out the insights from some of our past episodes to continue to give you that unfair advantage when it comes to your work and your creativity. So this episode, we're actually going to focus on what is on the lips of everyone who's talked about the music industry and the future of the music industry, which is that there's more disruption that needs to come to record labels. And so we got a lot of great insights from our experts who not only said that there is innovation and disruption needed for record labels, but gave us some really clear ways on how we can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Some things are already changing, right? We're already observing some of those emerging trends. But really, the entire paradigm is set to shift. So in our interview with Bosco, we talked about the three horizons that are leading us into the future of music. So Horizon 1, specialized artistry, which is kind of what you're familiar with now. Hey, if you're a rapper, you rap on tracks, you make music. If you're a singer, like you sing those songs, sing the hooks maybe. If you're a producer, you create the music, the musical sound beds behind all of your favorite songs, right? So that's specialized artistry. You stay in your lane. That's kind of where we are now. And then we're also looking way out into the future, the far future, maybe 10 years from now. We talked about creator ecosystems, right? Where, if you are an artist, maybe at the core of things, you're a producer, but there's so many different things that branch off of that. Maybe it's products, maybe it's merch, maybe it's services you're offering, digital experiences, whatever that is. But there's just this whole ecosystem that gets built around you. But to get from where we are now to where we're going to be, that's the transitional phase, that Horizon 2. And that tends to be, 3 to 7 years or so. So far enough out into the future where some things are going to change, but not so far out that it's a whole new paradigm. So as we consider all of the differences between Horizon 1, what we're experiencing now, and what we think we'll be experiencing years out in Horizon 3, we talked to Bosco about Horizon 2, that transition period of 3 to 7 years from now that's going to link those two realities together.
I honestly think we're really on the last days of label structure deals. I think we've already kind of seen the point of change in that within the last 4 years, and having artists really consider their masters. There are companies out there that allows artists to keep their masters, but at a contingency of a lesser signing fee or bonus fee or something like that, which is cool. But also maybe lowering the mastering rights, not having the master so long, where it just feels like more of a partnership investment. Like this is a great piece to put in my portfolio, but not like owning a person. Like this is a business deal, but it's not like your whole life.
Yeah.
Oh, you can have my masters for like 10 years, you know, stuff like that. I think, we should really consider because that's still like a pain point in the industry is like really controlling your masters and knowing how your masters are being used.
Yeah, so echoing, Bosco's sentiments there, labels are really kind of the most vulnerable aspect of this music industry as we move forward into the future of music. And it's really interesting because traditionally they've had all the power. They were the ones that were kind of
Yeah.
exploiting, the bands and musicians that were out there in the market. But now, as artists get, just different options and new tools and new technologies, they're starting to realize, hey, I don't have to just rock with how things have been going before, and maybe this needs to be rethought.
Yeah. And I think it's that rethinking, that reimagining that could help us get from H1, which is keeping artists specialized and siloed, to
Yeah,
H3, which is like a thriving creator that is formed like an ecosystem around
hmm
themselves.
hmm
Is really rethinking labels and how they function at this point, right? So like Bosco talked a lot about how labels really they own all of your masters, right? That's your IP, that's really your ability to make money and monetize, right? So in rethinking what a label is and how they function, what if instead of looking at an artist as sort of like IP to be owned or image to an image and a likeness to be owned, we
hmm
instead and labels instead looked at artists as brands, right? Similar to how an agency would. You have a roster of brands that you seek to create partnerships for, you
Yeah,
seek to advertise on a larger scale, you seek to get them exposure, but you're not seeking to own the things that are coming out of that brand. So I think maybe it would be more helpful and even game changing to think of labels more as agencies,
yeah,
and instead of seeking to own and control everything that comes out of this brand, you were looking to connect it. You were looking
mm,
to provide it more exposure, more
yeah,
awareness. You're looking to amplify it so that that brand can jump into new industries, new frontiers of content and
yeah.
creativity, new ways to really put more products out into the world. So I feel like that is where the future of labels will need to go in order for us to get from specialized artistry to creator ecosystems.
Man, it's so interesting to hear the way you framed it, kind of that agency model. So I was recently reading a book on corporate strategy, right? And it talks about Procter and Gamble and how it was set up as
Mm,
like multiple different brands. And exactly what you were saying, it's like if a label was looking at it like that, the strength is that when you have multiple different brands, what you're learning from brand X, you can use with brand Y, or the overall
yeah,
marketing spend, you can like share it among all of these brands and get better deals as you're,
yeah.
promoting them on the web or promoting them on radio or whatever that is. So yeah, it's like, the plan, the blueprint is already right there in other businesses, but it's just a futuristic way of saying, I'm gonna, cherry pick the best lessons from these other industries and apply it here to music and what we've got going on.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about music that makes us want to say like, nah, like we can't apply these other
These other
things that we're
lessons.
learning from
Yeah.
other industries because music is special. And and music is special. We all know that. But it's not special in terms of like it can't. There's nothing we can learn
Yeah.
from other industries, and I think that's why sometimes it's so difficult for us to innovate in this industry.
Yeah. And some of that can be like, hubris or like the ego, like, yo, like
Mm,
we're this industry, we're massive, like this is how we move, this is what it is. which kind of brings us to that premise of like of right sizing, right? And I know that
Yeah.
you were mentioning that before from an advertising standpoint. Can you
Yeah.
explain that a little bit to the audience
Yeah.
really quick before I jump into our next insight?
Yeah, totally. So I'm not sure if this is like purely an advertising term, but like right sizing is definitely like something I've used at different agencies. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really to say like, let us take a step back and think about what is the right sized role of, you know, a particular, you know, job function, or a particular brand, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And so you really you bring that up to gain a little bit more context around sort of like a creative problem when you're trying to solve it. So you want to figure out what is the right sized role for a product, or a right sized role for this job function as we're looking to sort of like solve this creative problem. And
Yeah.
so we pose the same thing when talking to DMAC Guidry, to my dad, DMAC Guidry, about what if we were in the future, we were in a creative friendly future.
Yeah.
What is the right sized role of a record label?
I believe this with all my heart because I believe there is a place for the middleman, you know, because some artists, they don't want to perform all of those tasks or those functions, or they don't have the information or the connections to outsource that, because all of those things they could do. But I think the right size for the label is to be a supply chain. That's all they should be.
Sorry, does that mean distribution?
It means distribution, but I mean in today's world, it could also mean sync and everything else. You are just a supply chain. So what you should have in your portfolio of talent in terms of executives are people that understand obviously the digital marketplace, but that people understand all of the revenue streams for music, you know, live, recorded music. There's revenue stream, performance money that will be coming in from radio, you know, play. There's digital that Sound Exchange collects, you know. Have experts like that. They should just be supply chain. They shouldn't be um, on the side of you know, let me exploit this uneducated artist from the inner city, and he doesn't understand intellectual property. Let me take all of his rights and go exploit those and make all the money, and maybe we'll give him something after all of the bills are paid back. But the artist doesn't know. So right sizing for the artist, if I can say that, would be, again, educate yourself, understand intellectual property, and then you may go to the label and cut a different type of deal. Or you may decide, guess what? I don't need a label at all, because I'm looking at Amazon and they're the same company. But when I look at Amazon's verticals, they've got movies. They are in the movie business. They are in the book business. They are in the, you name it, you know, they are in that business. So I could, if I'm an artist and I haven't already signed my rights away, then I have to be savvy enough to understand that all, you should look at all of these companies as supply chain. But from an artist perspective, I think the right sizing is own your stuff, go start a company, go spend $100 and start you an LLC. Even if you want to start a sole proprietorship, go start a business or a holding company. Take everything that you've created and put it there. Now you have a company that has assets, and then you go about making your deals with the idea that these people are supply chain.
Yo, that really surprised me. You know, thinking of record labels really as just a supply chain. Like I've never really applied that line of thinking to it. And it really just has me starting to wonder, like what could this mean for the music industry?
Yeah, and I think too, like thinking that, because I think middleman, it has had like a obviously a bad connotation to it for like whenever you use that to refer to someone or something. But you know, hearing that, you know, that it's okay, it's okay to be the middleman, or it's okay to be a supplier. You know, there's still a lot of equity in that. There's still a lot of money to be made in that, right? So I'm really wondering if this means that if labels were to take a step back and look at themselves as supply chain, if that would cause less exploitation, less burnout, you know what I mean? Less all of that, as they focus on really creating value in the ways where they can really do it well for their artists. You know, for example, we talked about the ways that, you know, a 360 deal, right? That's a way to squeeze every single piece of money, value, whatever you can out of an artist, right? But that's essentially like exploiting them, right? You're not adding value. You're kind of taking whatever value is there and squeezing it out instead of adding value. Whereas if you focused on what are the ways I can really provide value, okay, that's distribution, that's leveraging my connections to all of these different parent and holding companies and media companies to help connect and provide exposure to this artist. Maybe that's even education. And things like that. However, when it comes to the creation of the music, you know, that's gonna, you know, either be on the artists and their team, or if they want to get into some different kind of industry, we're not gonna seek to make money off of that. We're gonna eat here. I think that labels would actually be surprised to see that their revenue not only continues to come in, but it could potentially double and triple as these artists start to take their creativity to other places and other verticals.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the conversations, you know, they've all been like fun and engaging, but this is the one that really it really excites me because it's like, man, like, here it is. Like, here's an example. This could be the future. This could change and really help creatives and make like life better for these musicians.
Yeah. So I do really think it would be game changing if artists leverage that supply chain prowess or that supply chain framework of companies, you know, like an Amazon, and either used labels as part of that supply chain, or decided to go on their creative paths, maybe foregoing a label altogether. But I do really feel like there is a way for an artist and a label with right sized roles to work together.
Right. And so I'm glad that you mentioned Amazon, right? Because I think that both artists and labels should be looking to Amazon as a template, as a blueprint of what this new, you know, partnership or relationship could be. You know, if you think about an Amazon, right, they've got e-commerce expertise, of course, with like, so you can go online and buy the thing that you want. They've got supply chain expertise. Once you buy it, it's getting to the fan as quick as possible, you know, sometime in a couple hours, but, you know, usually a couple days. They've got digital streaming, right? So whether it's like, you know, Amazon Prime and the video and movies there, or, you know, Amazon's music service, right? They're even doing some events. Like Beyonce did like some kind of like fan event last year that was facilitated by Amazon. And then there's all of the ad space and, you know, other opportunities that are part of that same ecosystem. So, you know, if an artist looked at them, it's like, hey, well, this is everything I need for my supply chain. Maybe I just rock with them. Or maybe some, you know, smart person at a label is like, yo, what if we tried this? Like, what if we took this approach to our business? How might that pan out? And I think it's exciting. You know, it really does show that there's multiple paths forward. We don't have to keep doing the same things that we've been doing all along.
Yeah, and I think like even bringing up that Amazon example, which is a great example because it shows the different things that we could seek to replicate. Yes. But, you know, I think, you know, maybe creators listening to this are like, yo, you know, I'm a one person team right now. Like I'm not really on like Amazon level right now. I'm not really Amazon adjacent at the moment. But, you know, I think in talking with Aaron Knight, I think we did get like a really good look at what this could look like on an independent level, right? And sort of, again, reframing how we think about ourselves in relation to the music industry and to music and record labels?
I think what makes us different is, again, we're not in the music business, we're in the people business. And I want to specify that even a little bit more. We're community builders, right? So we're great dream builders because we're great community builders. We're doing that in the music industry, and people don't typically take that approach to the music industry. Again, they come in with a product and or a service, and then they try to gauge the market for if their product or service is good. We don't have to do that. People always need community, because you can't subsist without community, right? So if we can come in and be your community, that's why that's really our business model is, we're community builders. So we come to artists who are growing but don't have teams that grow the same way that they do, right? We come into companies that are looking to express a message, but they have no real engagement with the community that they need to express it with. So as we walk through our industry, we're never confined by an industry because we can take community anywhere, which is why we started out as a label and then we became a creative agency. We're not looking to outlast Warner Records. We're not looking to compete with LVRN because, again, we're not in the music game, we're in the people game, right? And as we build people, there will always be a way for us to build our vision, because with good people comes money, right? If we build the people up, they attract what's needed, we have money, right? And so that's just a resource for us to continue to build. I think that we're going to continue to inspire people to do the same thing. You know, that's why we have the shirts and such. So I think we're the onlys because we're attacking music from a community standpoint. And music is really a me business. It's a me, and I, what can I get? What can I get? And we're coming to say, what can we give? What infrastructure can we build? How can we heal? How can we restore? How can we create ownership? But also, how can we not get engulfed in what's not ours? And how can we get what is ours?
So one thing that keeps just catching my attention whenever we have talked to Erin or just heard her clips is her saying she doesn't consider herself to be in the music business at all. Yeah. She's looking at all these adjacent options and adjacent tasks and saying, hey, I'm in the people business. I'm serving the people that are here. It just so happens that they're musicians, but we're facilitating, their relationships, their deals, their partnerships, their creativity, so they can create value in these other lanes, right? And, it's got us thinking like maybe if you need to in order to make true impact as a creative, you have to get out of the music business. That's what it starts to feel like. And, you can look at some traditional media companies and some of the more modern ones and see that they kind of are headed in that lane as well, or they operate in that space. One example is like Disney or those other like larger studios, right? They've always had music as a part of their movies, but they're not like, oh, like we're in this music thing. It's like, hey, we've got, Disney musicians, Disney artists that, maybe they record an album, but then they're also the star of a sitcom on Disney Channel. And then we have them voice a character in one of our Disney movies as well. And then, they sing the song on the soundtrack, which, siphons back into Radio Disney, all these things. There's all these other verticals and other opportunities where they're not saying, hey, we're just a music business. We're an entertainment business. We're a storytelling business. And music is one of the ways that we tell that. Or you can look at like YouTube, right? With their like different creator houses, they've got something similar where even if someone's a musician in there, that's cool. But they're creating, lifestyle videos or music videos or other video content that's, in addition to what they've got going on with their music career.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also we can look at a more contemporary and even bringing it even closer back to music example of what Kendrick Lamar and Dave Free are doing with PG Lang. I've been really impressed, amazed, really like admiring what is coming out of PG Lang, because they're not only saying, we're going to have Kendrick and Baby Keem and whoever else is going to be releasing music, but they are telling the stories, they are making the brand partnerships that is essentially positioning them to be more of a media company. So for example, I'm not sure if you've seen some of the recent work that PG Lang has done with Cash App, but they've essentially positioned Kendrick, who like as someone who's built a credibility in the music space, to tell relevant stories around like marketing stories and business stories for audiences for different brands.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, and you know, we talked about Amazon, we talked about Disney, we talked about YouTube, those big companies, but really the key through line that we see there is like, even if you're an independent artist or you have an independent label of artists, and you know, just let's start to reframe the proposition of starting a label. You know, I think it would be game changing.
Tell me more.
Yeah. I think it would be game changing, instead of launching record labels, to launch holistic creativity labels. So we are not pigeonholing ourselves into saying my artists make music. You are expanding what you're allowing your artists to make and what you're allowing your artists and yourself to have access to. I think it's really important just seeing all of these as an example and what that could teach us about our mindsets being music creators.
So then how do you think that changes artistic development, like that the labels are offering?
Yeah. So, you know, holistic artist development, you know, I think we can start to, you know, instead of only developing an artist sonically or musically, we can start to think about how we are developing artists and creators to tell better stories and express themselves better, to create better art, and potentially create better partnerships between brands, organizations, movements, etc. And so we talked a bit about this in our episode with Bosco as we covered this concept of sense-making. And Desmond, can you actually really quick just give us like a definition of what sense-making is?
Yeah, absolutely. So sense making, it's the process by which people give meaning to their collective experiences, right? So you'll be going through a whole bunch of stuff and it's like, hey, what's happening here? You take that step back and start to think like, hey, this is what this means. These are the implications. This is why this matters. It's used a lot in business, particularly when you think of like consumer insights or like, you know, user research marketing insights, and you start to understand all these different patterns of behavior and what they mean for your customer, for the market in general, and then also for your business. So of course, Bosco was the perfect person to, you know, talk through sense making, given the name of her latest album was Someday This Will All Make Sense.
For me, I was like really into Austin Powers, and I found the DVD, so I've been watching it on like my G3 right here, this one right here. I've been watching Austin Powers on that, and it's been like super like interesting, but also the stories that these pieces carry and like how you acquired them. I'm more interested in like how these objects got to me versus like, oh my God, this is a really cool Mac. Yeah. But it's like the story of going, it's like some Atlanta shit. I met this man at a trailer, like in the woods, to get like one of these computers, because they're like really like old engineers and computer software nerds that have like croaked out, and they're just like, I'm going to the woods, I live in the woods, and I'm just eating rooted vegetables and kombucha, you know. And then these are like the collectors, these are like the people who are like pushing the past forward. But also I think kind of just receiving this information as a gift and figuring out the way to extract it, to share, to make it a more tangible language. I think people are just so fixated on just living in the past instead of bringing the past forward and like really like reimagining, okay, the stuff that we are making is just a derivative of the past. It's just your approach on like how you're going to do it different.
So Bosco was really the perfect person to talk about this sense-making process, because her latest album, her most recent album, was called Someday This Will All Make Sense. And she just kind of chatted through a little bit of her influences, you know, the way she uses archiving and, you know, just older experiences to make sense of what's going on now and where she's going next.
So I think it was surprising to hear her creative process of archiving because, and the way she put it, which is like so simple yet impactful, is that she's going into the past and bringing the past forward, right? Like she's not just indulging in the past, right? Like she mentioned, she's watching Austin Powers on that old like Mac G3.
Yeah.
She's not just sitting there and like eating popcorn and watching Austin Powers, but she's letting that influence the things that she's making in the present and the things that she will make in the future. So, for example, if like you check out Bosco's Instagram, she actually like found those like big space egg chairs that are in Austin Powers, and she's like got them in her house now. And she's like making content with it, and she's doing a lot of cool stuff with it. So I think that's just like such a great example of how of sense making, right? And how you can take a lot of things that have contributed to where we are today, but instead of just like passively letting that impact the present, we're actively taking that and making new things for the future. So for anyone who is familiar with Bosco and what she does, she started Slug Global, which is a collective of artists and creators who are working with brands. They're creating their own content. They're making music. They're making films. They're making events. They're making huge events for like really big companies, but they're doing that by being curators and arbiters of the past and bringing it forward in really creative ways. So, I think this conversation with Bosco is just making us think that perhaps bringing the past forward helps you reimagine the future for yourself and other creators as well. So I think it would just be really amazing to continue to get new creativity out of yourself, out of other artists, if there was some sort of like sense making strategy at labels, right? Or at, whatever houses all of this creative talent. And I think that only becomes possible when you start to think of yourself not as a label, but as or not as a traditional record label, but as more of like a holistic creator label, creator company, creator collective, whatever it is that we want to call it in the future. We're not going to come up with those answers for you. Y'all listening are going to come up with those answers.
And it's interesting to hear you say, like, how revolutionary it might be to have these like sense making strategists at labels or at these music companies. But then the flip side, and it's kind of what Bosco is already doing, is having artists that function as sense makers for other companies. And I think that could be a very interesting way of looking at it as well. It's like, how does this musician help me to better make sense of my target audience? Or how does their unique cultural insight resonate or relate to my market and what I'm offering?
And you know why that's so perfect and on the nose is because we were talking about PG Lang and Cash App before. Essentially what that was Cash App trying to tell a story about financial literacy, but doing it in a way that was community relevant. And brands can't do that on their own. They need a Kendrick Lamar. They need a you listening to this. They need a creator, someone who has the credibility and the know-how in a particular community, in a particular space. They need you to help make sense of their audience to them and their product to their audience, right? Think of yourself as in the middle as that sense maker. I totally love that, right? Like you're not an art, you're not a singer, you're not a rapper, you're not a producer, you are a sense maker, right? And that's how, and you make sense of your environment and you put that into your music, and then you make sense of something for a brand that's going to hit you up, and then you make sense of that for your audience or their audience or an audience that they're trying to reach. I think that's like the future is sense maker.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was Kendrick and his team or a separate agency or someone internal to Cash App, but whoever came up with the "That's Money" tagline, chef's kiss, man. It was perfect. It was perfect the way they introduced that, you know, it's like kind of a slang term, but it fits so well with their you know, brand, who they're going after, the product that they're offering, and to introduce it in the commercial with Kendrick Lamar, like it was just perfect. You know, as you're saying, like, you know, he was the sense maker there. It's got me thinking of like 2 Chainz and the work that he's doing for Crystals and, you know, the little side chick campaign they have. It's like, yo, you need someone who can think different and make sense of, you know, emerging cultural trends and guide you forward, guide your brand forward.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I'm glad we closed with some insights from Bosco, because that takes us, you know, right back to the beginning, right? The first thing that we opened this up with in this conversation was her saying that, you know, record labels are the most vulnerable structures within the music industry, right? Which is why we've been talking through what those new label structures might be, right? So for her, you know, she kind of had us thinking like, yo, let's rethink what labels are and what they have been. And maybe they can be more like Slug Global, like what she's doing with agencies that are more fluid like or similar to a meta label, right? From there, we thought, maybe it's a whole new paradigm, a whole new structure. And we're hearing from Demet Guidry, and he's talking through, you know, maybe labels are too big. They need to be right sized into a supply chain, right? And we start to think like, you know, perhaps there's less exploitation from labels if they focus just on that value chain and how they can create value for these artists along the way, and how it might completely change the game if they became, you know, more like an Amazon to these musicians. But obviously that doesn't work for everyone. You know, everyone doesn't have the scale, the size, the scope of an Amazon. So we talked to Erin Knight about how this might play out on a more independent level, right? And for her, it's about actually expanding the pie by getting out of music altogether and starting to think of yourself in the people business and how are you going to facilitate growth and value for people, right? And as you start to, you know, expand beyond just this, you know, core music value, you know, that kind of unlocks more creativity for artists, and, you know, maybe more musicians or more business leaders can start to think of record labels as, you know, holistic creativity labels, right? And thinking through, you know, what that new holistic approach can lead to, what it can provide. And of course, that brought us, you know, all the way back to Bosco, right? And thinking through how, you know, artists are more than just, you know, songwriters, more than just storytellers. They are sense makers, right? So the future of labels is either, you know, offering these strategies to artists to help them sense make about their markets. But what's even better is when labels or, you know, agencies or whatever they're going to be partner with these artists to help them sense make for other entities, whether it's, you know, government organizations, other companies like Cash App, or, you know, other industries. That's what it really comes down to. And this conversation really just hits on, you know, how much room there is to grow for record labels. You know, they're vulnerable now, but they don't have to just, you know, go by the wayside if they reinvent and reimagine themselves. And it's just exciting to think of, you know, what value that might offer to artists, but also like the just creativity and new, fresh ideas that could come from these business folks that are at the labels now.
Yeah. So, you know, we want to hear from you. You know, what are those future types of, you know, companies or collectives or whatever that will house all of the creativity that comes from these artists and creators? Again, the point of this show is to not tell you what those are. The point is to set you up to think about what those could be for the future. So if you're listening to us on Spotify, you can scroll down. We've got a little Q&A that you can answer on YouTube. You could just leave a comment. But yes, please, like, let us know. What are some of the things that you're thinking after listening to this episode? We'd love to hear it. Also, just a few housekeeping notes. Please just like, follow, subscribe wherever you're listening. Also, check us out on social at Tools for Time Traveling. You know, we'd love to get some more conversation and engagement going there as well. You could also be alerted when we've got new episodes coming out, or just when we have something interesting to share. With that, we've been Tools for Time Traveling, and let's gear up to build the future that we want to see.
All right. Peace.